at transitioning at work, there was no spaces for me. There were spaces for gay and lesbian children, let's be clear. And back in those days, even in the ballroom days, there were categories that weren't sufficient for me, that didn't speak of who I was. And how they categorized a lot of that stuff, I didn't find safe. At work, I didn't feel safe. So I guess working for a lot of people and having them have ownership, and being at a time in my life where I was just fed up, in knowing that all we're going to get is a Metro card or lunch and a Metro card, I decided that we needed more as a community and founded Glitz back in 2015, because I wanted to be not only a founder, but I wanted my own agency. When I say agency, I don't mean the actual agency. I mean my work, my vision and my view, my policies and all of that. As a Black trans woman, I want to be able to show other Black trans women that their own agency counts. Develop your own space and your own work, and nobody can tell you how to do that.
Thank you so much. Ian, you want to follow?
Sure. And it's Ian. Yeah. So I think that when you talk about feeling a calling to create these communities, I think it comes out of just finding your tribe and finding the community first. And out of that comes the need. I think for me, Ochre Project and any space that I've started has always been birthed out of just an idea of how to create more connection, how to alleviate loneliness. Ochre Project was started because, I was going home for the holidays and I thought to myself, I know that the holidays can be a really lonely time for a lot of people in my life who are trans and Black. And I wanted to create something that would create more connection so that no one could say, I don't know anyone else who looks like me. So I think that the calling sort of just comes out of existing in space and sort of hearing, what the community needs and what you yourself are looking for. And I think you either step into a position where you decide to create that space for yourself and give yourself what you need, as well as sharing that with others. Or you find yourself in a position where it's very clear as you listen what people are looking for, and you feel like you're in a position to do it.
Thank you. And Professor Foster. Oh, you're muted.
Here we go. Hello, everybody. And thank you for having me here. I'm absolutely so proud to be a part of this conversation. But I would have to say for me, as they say, there's levels to this. There was an evolution to me feeling like I needed to create a space that was authentic to my needs, my identity, my person. It absolutely aligned with my growth and my development as a person of color, yes. And much like Cayenne spoke about categories and the need to compartmentalize and place tags and labels on everything, although they were there, I didn't connect with any of them. And so many of those categorizations were embedded still in a very dominant white culture. So as a person of color, we had very unique needs, very unique ways of connecting. We had history, we had tradition, we had cultural values. We had just our own way of a rhythmic, cathartic, understood, unspoken connection that was there, and just connecting in community in that regard brought peace and helped to reduce some stressors. But definitely through the collegiate experience, and which was paramount to connect with other people who felt like me And then in my latter years of educational matriculation, once what we call the children started coming to me, they actually propelled me to birth things that I had never considered doing. My house became a safe house. People I didn't know would just knock on my door and say, "We heard, are you so-and-so? Are you Emma?" And they would just come there so they could be authentic, be themselves. I hosted, definitely not on this level, but the most rudimentary balls in my living room, just to give them space to have opportunity to express. But those experiences, but more importantly, listening to the pain, the trauma, the rejection, all of that pushed me to, first of all, make sure that I'm visible. And for me, I had a very, very religious upbringing. So confronting that in the face, I was actually a pretty prominent leader in the church. So visibility was huge, and that attracted other people like me. I was wearing my bow ties, my suits and jackets, and up in the front of these traditional spaces. So it propelled me to actually start Partners for Change, which is the nonprofit that I launched, but we specifically confront oppression in religious spaces with LGBTQIA persons of color. So it was levels for me at different junctures, levels.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
And everything that you guys said just comes into the next question, right? Dorian Corey says, Black people have a hard time getting anywhere. If they do, they're probably straight. So as we go on and watch the film, we see the evolve scene, and then we come into the categories, just like you guys talked about, that include femme, realness, coach, standards that are essentially pulled from white heteronormative norms. And one house member described going into these categories as essentially like going back into the closet. Intentionally, and intentionality and language are something we are less focused on these days. So we do see these things being dismantled. We see this divestment from white heteronormative beauty standards. But how are you all cognizant of reimagining your own community or identity standards? And Professor Foster just talked a little bit about this with the religious or church environment. And anyone would like to add a little bit more?
Well, I can add additional comments to what I said as far as being cognizant of reimagining your own community or identity standards. I think it's very, very influential and impactful to pay attention to the generations that follow us, and not to pigeonhole who we are as a community and give ourselves to permission to evolve so that we're able to actually meet the needs of the community on a continuum versus only being able to appeal to the needs of the community at a certain juncture in the community's evolution. So paying attention to those who will follow either in my footsteps or create their own helps to inform how we are able to reimagine our communities, but also to build in a progressive context as people of color. And, you know, you hear some of the same parallel struggles in addition to those things that are now being confronted that either have been reframed, restructured, or it's just the same old stuff, different era. But yeah, it helps just to pay attention to the evolution of generations that come after.
I too myself, being Black, being trans, being 50 something years, 58 to be exact years old now, coming from a church background, coming from a Methodist, very uptight, very
come on, come on, Cayenne. Now you
very, very uptight, very bougie. For Black people, they just felt like they were the creme de la crop.
Come on,
and you know that hurt because that was also a time when it was okay for a minister, a Black minister, a Black prominent minister to call you faggot on the pulpit, to talk about the bulldaggers and the dykes and the lesbians on the pulpit, where now they would probably be flogged and stoned. We had to live through that. And that was at a time where you seen the glamour and pageantry of church. And then you seen it in the ballroom scene. For a lot of us that are younger, we got a lot of that tradition from our own culture, from our own Blackness, from our own upbringing. Not every Black person got that, got to experience that. And for the ones that, and I'm not going to say it was all bad. There's something to be said when you're brought up in faith, but you have to find faith yourself in these messy rooms of worship. And so I realized in church, I had to find my place, so to speak, and I still had to be me, and that was hard when they were trying to just prey it on out of me. But I had to discover me, and at a time when everybody else in church that was like me was hiding it. I was the only one that was like the bud and flower. Everybody else in church that I knew was like me was hiding it, and they had the pleasure and the power to hide it. As a youth, I did not know how to dial it down. I also didn't understand that I wasn't just gay. I wasn't just a faggot. I wasn't just a slur. I was actually transgender. And at that time, that word didn't even exist. It was my great uncle that said, "You are a young lady waiting to be." And I said, "Well, what the hell is that?" And he said, "Well, let's sit down and let me explain." And he had a bunch of his gay prominent friends from DC over. And as he broke this down, he said, "Even though you're going to choose this road, I choose for you to walk in the shoes you're comfortable in." And I thought about that, and I asked him, and he said, "What do you want to be in life?" I said, "I want to be like mommy." He said, "Well, that would be a woman." He said, "Do you want to be," and I had to understand the way he was questioning me, "Do you want to transfigure yourself to have a child?" And I said, "No." He said, "So then you're a woman. You're a young lady waiting to happen." And I didn't understand. Now that I'm older and I see so many categories of what people want to place themselves into, I realize lady is something you accomplish. It's not something you're born with. It's something you've obtained from the culture that was brought to your life. So in gender roles, I guess in my eyes, I've seen that being very different, because when I've had so many church people tell me, "Oh, you want to be like her," I beg to differ. No, I don't. Because she's not a lady. A lady's a diamond in the rough, and there are no diamonds in here. And I had to identify that, but also see that there was road for growth. I was still a young, budding, hot mess. So I had to develop and learn through the beat downs from people like Joanne and the elders, Dory and Corey, and even some of my mentors that choked me up for doing what was wrong. We're living in a time now where you can't do any of that. You can't be stern with your kids because there's so many categories. There's so many different descriptions of what this life looks like now.
Thank you so much.
I was just gonna say I can't really add much more than what's already been said. It's all been beautiful, but I think part of queerness and transness inherently is reimagination. I think you know, I grew up in Birmingham, Alabama, and I never had such a beautiful conversation as that. You know, such a generous and moving like space was never made for me. It was sort of always like the way that the world was beginning to perceive me was kind of always something I started to receive long before I recognized that anyone was perceiving me. Because I just kind of, I got very used to myself because I had to be very comfortable with who I was. And so I just presented it. And eventually it sort of became, and that was just kind of how I reimagined the rules because I just knew, you know, a family famous story of me is going to Party City with my mom and because I was going to go to school for Halloween and I was going to wear a pink princess dress and I was determined that's what was going to happen. And that's what was honey I wanted to give. I wanted to slay and I did. And so I went to Party City and we're at the back of the store and this woman, this, you know, Southern white lady is like, you know, what do you want? And I was like, oh, well, I would like that. I want that dress. And then she says, oh, well, honey, you don't want that. That's for boys. And I didn't react to her. I just turned to my mother and said, Mom, let's go to another store. And so she said, oh, okay, honey. And, you know, gave me what I wanted. And my mom, you know, said, oh, well, you'll be teased. You'll be this. And I was like, I don't care. This is, I'm going to look cunt and I'm going to be that girl, you know? And I think that like, there's sort of I think that there are many different walks of life as we've talked about within transness and queerness, but I think I particularly hold a special place in my heart for little girls denied of their girlhood like me, who like, you know, Kyan was saying, like, we can't hide it. It existed before, it existed outside of us, it existed before us. There was no real way to kind of say, I'm gonna hide in the closet, I'm gonna hide in the shadows. I don't really think that's been given to a lot of Black trans queer people specifically, you know. Honey, if there's sugar in the tank, there's sugar in the tank, and I make it sweet. So I think that at the end of the day, there is sort of a constant demand that when Blackness and queerness meet at an intersection, that we are constantly is demand on us that we must reimagine what our lives look like and reimagine the rules so that we can fit into it, because there's not many boxes. And now that we're in a whole new kind of phase where there can be, you know, all of us sitting here today talking in the way that we're talking, it's so exciting to think about what, you know, the generations that are to come after us what kind of boxes they can step into if they so choose to, and boxes they can step out of if they have no interest in that and make their own space. But I think that choice is what we have fought for. And it's kind of beautiful to be able to see it in this lifetime and see that there are going to be poses and other shows that will come out of this. And that's kind of incredible to be a part of. Yeah.
Absolutely. I love the way you guys talked about the strength and dignity of being who you are, unapologetically. And it brings us into the next question. You guys are like ahead of these questions already, which is that Dorian defines family as growing up with human beings with a mutual bond. And you all have talked about this already. Can you tell us a little bit about how you found and defined family? We've talked about the church family already, but define family and creators of family, and how has your definition expanded over the course of your life, over the course of your work?
I would say I didn't like my family very much. I would say growing up, I was in my own world, in my own mind, in my own space. I didn't like my physical family, my biological family. I didn't like several of our families that were friends of family. I didn't like any of them. When I could really express who I was, I began to develop my own family. I'm looking at now 20-something kids internationally that I call my children that are thriving, are succeeding, are trans, non-binary, and everything. And I love them more than I've ever been close to my biological family. They have came here and practically wiped my ass when I was sick, and my own family wasn't here. Also, just recently, my brother-in-law expressed the fact that he had cancer and my family was there for him. And well, it kind of shocked me because everybody's kissing my ass now because I've become something and somebody. And he kind of gloated over telling me that. And I said, well, that's fine because 7 years ago I had cancer and I had nobody but my chosen family. And some of them were in my mom's backyard when this went down. And he was highly upset. I said, I congratulate you. I congratulate my family for stepping up and doing what's right for you. But my chosen family would be the ones to lay me to rest if it came to that time and honor me in a way when I need it. Our families have become, as the people we are, chosen family somehow works out. It just works because we get to handpick and choose who we want in our circle so they can help our lives be better. And when you look back on your biological family, now I'm at a point at 58 years old. I finally have my family's approval. I had to practically suck a donkey dick to get this kind of attention, but now they love me. She's on magazines, she's in movies, and we love her. Stay away from me because you were those people that didn't want me around. So, be careful of what you wish for.
Okay, I guess I can speak. I see you, Ian. I can speak to it. And Ian, I was born and raised in Montgomery, Mobile, just so you know. Yes.
Come on, Kimbo. I love it.
Oh yeah. But as it relates to family, Ilona, when I was growing up, older people in the community, and I have to say, people know who you are before you know who you are. And I can remember returning to certain places. I would visit home frequently. And the neighbors who watched me grow up as a child, now that I was an adult, and they would see me and they would say, you still the same. We knew you were a little boy when you was out here in these, they would say things like that. And just understanding the culture and understanding the community, because I grew up with people calling me She-Ra or He-Man or all these terms. I always loved athletics now, always. So I was outside. I had BMX bikes, I was jumping ramps, I did baseball, softball, football, and I did not find refuge in my biological home, although externally, people would have thought it was ideal. My father was a very prominent minister. My mom, that runway show, Cayenne referenced a little bit ago, yeah, she led the stroll. It was her. But, she would try to force her definition of femininity and what little girls do, those heteronormative constructs on me. And I rebelled against all of it. And it wasn't, in her eyes, and she's very Southern, it was disrespectful. And not that I even had the language to frame, I'm just being myself. There's no conscious thought that's going into how I'm showing up. This is me. I don't want that stuff. I remember the first time I saw the movie Fried Green Tomatoes, and the character Iggy came on the screen. I was much older then, but seeing that affirmation in that child character, You know, she ripped off her clothes at the wedding. They let her put on her suspenders and her knickers and her page boy cap, and she climbed that tree, and that's how she was at the wedding. And I found myself saying, now if my mom and them had to just let me do this when I want it to be that way, you know. And even recently, my father passed away. It's been 2 years now, and we were looking at old videos, and my family was still struggling. They still struggle with who I am. And we were watching old videos, and we used to sing all the time. You know, my siblings and I were like the Jackson 5. And my brother saw me come into the focal point of the video. And yeah, I had this hideous, and I'm going to reiterate, it was a hideous dress on. And it was hideous. But the way I came on screen in that dress, it startled him, because we're older now. He was like, yo, why are you so aggressive? He was like, you're so aggressive on there. But in that moment, I saw him. I saw him having a moment of reckoning and truth to say, oh my goodness, you have always been who you are in that moment. In that moment. So, I mean, my chosen family that I have through partnerships, relationships, it is definitely, I have 2 biological children. But my biological children were raised in the midst of all our chosen family. So that includes gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, intersex. I mean, it expands. Our family is huge because of that. And it means the world. It means the world, because there's so much pain and loss associated with biology. Your biological family, extended family, you know, those experiences are often very painful to re-engage or to try to engage because of obligatory narratives that you've been given about who you should be and how you should be with family, when oftentimes that's traumatic. It's very painful, and it takes so long to unpack, to heal. And when you finally, if it is your resolve to just disconnect, you have to shoulder that grief, that loss, yes, but then the ridicule, you know, and the negativity. So knowing that you're part of a community who connects differently, not in shared trauma, which is often what people want to attach, but stories of release, stories of liberation, true joy on a different level and in a different capacity. That propels you, that empowers you to continue to be who you are, because it adds value to who you've been told has no value. So, I mean, your chosen family and how community embraces you plays a huge role in healing you and giving you more depth in how you understand who family is and what family does.
Thank you, Professor Foster. And Ian, did I say it right? No, Ian. Ian, okay, like me. Ilona. A question came in that sort of like goes along with what we were talking about, which is, since a lot of our attendees are social workers or aspiring social workers, what would be your advice for young Black people who are not sure if they are trans or queer? And how could we as social workers support and help them figure it out for themselves?
I think that it's a worthy question, but a very difficult question to answer, because I think there's the answer that I can give to other like Black and queer and trans people who are coming up. And that answer is, you know, there really is no right way to do it. It's just kind of going to be how you get there, because, and that's kind of just like in life. Our journey to ourselves is really not that different from everyone else's. It's just that the barriers that are put up along our journey are a lot thicker and higher and more difficult to overcome, and a lot of unnecessary things that are there as well. But what I can certainly tell you is that I have only ever been my happiest when I looked at myself in the mirror and said, I recognize and love who's there. And I think that everyone should have that experience. As far as what social workers can do, I think that the first thing is to move away from the idea that you can, I forget how the person worded it, but that like you can kind of like help the person figure it out for themselves. Like they're going to come to you with questions if you seem like a safe place to go. You know, if you yourself have made made this a part of your life, people will find you, because that's what happens. We are young queer and trans kids are not quiet because they don't have answers, or even because they don't know what to question. They're quiet because they're not sure who to talk to about it. Like I knew at an early age, like I had language to say, like, you know, yeah, I'm I'm a woman in a boy's body, but like it never meant what it meant, never meant trans to me. You know what I'm saying? It just meant I was me. It just meant like I was Ian. I had my own special flavor, my own certain way of doing things. But I didn't I didn't really need to start asking questions until I said, oh, wait a minute, like maybe this is a thing. And it was usually, and I usually found out that it was a thing because there was someone around me who was speaking about it and who taught me about it. Whether it be because that was another Black queer trans person or another trans person, or whether it was because it was someone who they themselves were so learned on the subject that it was just a part of their natural everyday practice. Don't try to force it. It's not going to work, because we can sniff out insincerity. Just make this a part of your life. Make us a part of your life. See us as your sisters, as your siblings, as your cousins, as your, you know, neighbors. See us as other people and see us as completely as valid as you. And I'm sure that the people will find you, because it's clear when you've integrated us into your lives, if that makes sense. When you see us as a part of your world. And I think that that is the problem, is that so many people want to be allies, but want to study us rather than, and like learn how to provide resources about us, rather than actually getting to know us. And I think that the best knowledge you can ever have is one that's one-on-one.
I agree completely. I'm so sorry that it's 7:50 and we have to wind this down, because otherwise we can spend the whole night, which calls for our successors to make sure to do a repeat. I'm saying this because this is being recorded. Yes,
I want to say, as professionals, as social workers, you cannot help someone understand their queerness, their transness. As a social worker, you can only support them. So you can't give advice about you're trans. You can't say you're this or that. You kind of, because you're the social worker, you have to stay non-biased and just be the support that they need. Otherwise, you can lose your job.
Professor Foster, take it away, because this is your realm. Oh, hold on. You're muted.
There we go. I'm sorry, Ilona, did you ask a specific question, or I heard you say you have to wrap it up?
Yes, we do. So we have 3 more questions, but if we get into them, we're not going to wrap it up by 8.
Sure.
So we do have an audience of social workers, and you are a social work professor, besides being a social worker yourself. So Kayan said something really valid following Ian's response to our attendee. Is there anything that you want to say to the social workers out there who are maybe not part of the LGBTQI plus collective, but they encounter and they don't have their own personal experience? What would be, besides getting their own personal experience, like Ian said, and just being genuine and treating everyone like a person and have people be seen and heard?
As social workers, I think it's very, very important that we remember that social work is a profession. We have a code of ethics that we are to utilize as our code of conduct. That is where you start. As a professional that interacts with people on a very intimate and personal level, you have to make sure that your biases are not present in the work. This is not about you, but about your ability to connect with the person that you're working with, which is why, in-person, person-centered is the approach that I'm going to use foundationally, because people are so misinformed. People are very miseducated. People are guilty of creating these generalized narratives after they've interacted with one individual, and they lose sight of allowing every individual to speak for themselves, to advocate for themselves, to define themselves, to introduce you to who they are uniquely for themselves. So as social workers, find out through relationship building what the needs of the populations are that you're working with, that you're serving. Never forget your humanity. Sit right in it. Empathize. Educate yourself. Okay? Foundationally, educate yourself so that you'll have a bridge to meet them on, and allow them to teach you, to show you, to tell you. Let them be the expert. Because we have degrees, because we've been licensed, when you're working with someone, you're not the expert. You let them be the expert and tell you what they need and what works best for them. And be very aware of social changes, politics, and laws that can potentially be harmful.
Which brings us to the best part of this, which is shout out time. So please, please, please do tell us about what you are currently working on or excited about. And please make sure, if you want, to put on the chat your website or whatever you would like to share with our audience.
I can go quickly. I've refocused a lot of my work towards, I'm still working at Oka Project. I have moved into a new position, and Dominique Morgan is the current executive director. So I'm currently sharing the vision and helping her build the organization to what it can be, so I can focus on my performing life. And in that role, I actually just received an award today. From the Off-Broadway League of Professional Theater Women. So I'm very excited about that. And then I will be doing a show in the summer that's yet to be announced.
Which, can we know the title of the show?
Not yet.
Okay. Well, do you have a website artistically?
I do. www.ianfieldstewart.com.
We're going to put it on the chat, Stephanie, if you can help me out with that.
Great. Thank you so much for having me today.
Gosh, thank you. Kayan. Oh, hold on, you're muted.
I'm trying to type and do all of this at the same time. I'm doing a lot. I'm fighting for our queer space at the Rockaway Beaches, Pier 1 and Pier 2, which is the Neponset. It's an old hospital that used to shun away AIDS patients and stored tuberculosis patients. The hospital's abandoned. They want to put a federal park there, which will remove our community if they put a federal park there. So I'm making the bid with the city of New York and the government to fight for that land and turn it into a land trust or a landmark for us, for our community. And June 2nd at Nowadays in Brooklyn, I'm having, because we didn't get to have it, the Day to End Violence Against Sex Workers. It's going to be an epic night starring Barbara Tucker, Zola Powell, Ja Love, the Dominique Powell, the list, Dominique St. James, Precious the Body Real, a dancer for Cardi B. I'm celebrating International Whores Day the same day because it is actually June 2nd. So this event, if you've never seen anything like this, get ready. It's about to happen.
I'll be quick. As Ilona mentioned in my bio, I currently work in the corrections department, specifically working with the transgender community in addition to LGBTQIA persons. And yeah, please forgive that my grandson just came in. But working with the National Organization of Forensic Social Work, and I did put the link in there for you all to visit the page if you'd like, but very budding projects. They just introduced within the prison system, what TARC committees to look at transgender accommodations differently. And I touched on that because that's something that I would like to definitely spearhead if possible in areas of education, accommodations, yes, but just creating a space within that context for transgender persons to connect, be educated, and to also address their mental health needs, specific and unique to this community.
I'm gonna need a showstopper.
Thank you so much. We made it. It's 8:01. Time is something really important, but we want to really thank you again so much for spending an hour with us, despite initial technical issues. This is so important. We're so eternally grateful. I'm passing it on to my colleague Sandy to close it out. This is being recorded. We will share with all the attendees and the panelists the link to be able to share it within your circles. And we will also add all the information that you have provided of all the projects that are going on.
Ilona, can I say, if there are any students or anybody that would like to ask additional questions, you are welcome to provide my email address to them.
We will. Thank you so much, Professor Foster.
You're welcome.
I will take us out. Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you again. This is a wonderful, wonderful panel. I wish we could sit here and chat all night. So I dropped the information in the chat. And if you guys are interested in following us on Facebook or Instagram, or check us out on our website, you can find all of that information there. We're also, for our students in here, we are also on Slack, and we are very active. So we always appreciate anyone's attendance. If you're interested in getting more involved in how you can use your voice to advocate for your fellow students or host exciting events like this, Student Congress is a great opportunity to do that. We have elections coming up this week, so you can find out more about that in our Fordham newsletter or on our Instagram. Thank you again so much to all of our panelists. We really appreciate your time, and have a great evening, everyone, and stay safe.
Thank you so much again.